So Jay, I'm addicted to telling stories. I want to keep doing it. It's really good for, uh, I'm going to say social media, but it's really relationships. It like helps me get more relationships. It helps people relate to what I've got going on. So how can I find more stories?
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to say that the best thing you can do to be a really good storyteller is be a story listener.
I just read your book like in this past month, and I've been telling a lot of stories from it, like with the framework, retellable framework, and it's
Amazing.
been making my social media stuff just pop off. Like, so I'm like, I gotta have this guy on. He's super smart. Charles Antis of Antis Roofing just highly recommends going to your workshops. Um, why storytelling? Why is it good? And why did you get into it?
The question in this time, in this new time, as we've kind of walked into this new era and we're not quite sure exactly what's being born, what's died already, what's surviving, what's resilient, is how do you navigate change? How do you navigate change in your career, in your family, in your adaptation? How do you handle it in all 1,000 different ways? And story to me is our best ally in that, because story is at its essence a module of change. It is at its essence how we as people, as humans, as cultures, as organizations have always conveyed change. And so it has to do with where you are now, but it has very much to do with where you come from and where you're going.
The story living concept as you're trying to build this out, because obviously storytelling, like your whole book is about how to make more memorable points basically through storytelling, and there's tons. It's basically like one of the best books I've read like tactically in a while. Like it's just so ridiculously good. are
Thank
you are
you.
you going to write a book about story living as you were describing earlier? Is that going down?
Yeah, I have two kids with my wife. We have two kids, and now they're adults. They're 16 and 20, basically adults. And I was kind of surprised that we had them 4 years apart, right? But it was just that exact amount of time where it's like, okay, we're ready to have another kid. We're ready now. And it's the same thing with a book. I was not in any way thinking about writing another book when I finished the first one. But little by little, these ideas pop up, and then that thing, and then how it's related, and how is the world different, and what is the world ready to hear that they weren't ready to hear when I wrote Retellable. And so, bit by bit, since 2020, I've been putting together some nuggets, some key ideas, some of my insights. And yeah, that's what I'm building to, is how it's partially, of course, how do you tell better stories, but it's primarily how do you live a better story. And that
Mm.
means how do you gather all of the insights from your life and look and say, what are the best gems? What are the gems that I left by the side of the road? What are the things that I didn't know what to do with, but they were key ideas or visions or insights or transformations or actions that I took or that I witnessed that really influenced me? And how you gather them together and put them in your hands, right? Shape them all, hone them all, shine them up, share them in the ways that you're talking about, which I love, in social media, on the big stage and the small stage, to your kids, to your wife. There's all of these are very important ways of sharing stories because they inform who you are and where you're going. And so, as you put them all together, it's like an opportunity to say, what is my essential constellation through which I see my life, and how do I accept guidance, really? Like, how do I find guidance through those bits of wisdom?
Mm. One of the reasons I needed to have you on is because I've run out of stories. I told all the good ones, I think, or all the ones that are like most obvious. I did do like my story palette or whatever afterwards, like with the notes, and then like just to give people that aren't super into Jay Golden yet, like a thing, right at the beginning here, it's like you helped me out a little bit here, but it's the idea of the story spine. And if you only could remember three parts of the story spine, it would be, um, what is it? Until one day, and what's the second one of the three that you have to
So
remember?
it's all right. It's all right. So the foundation of the journey curve, which is the story framework that I have made use of and designed, is drawn from a bunch of different masters. Right. One thread of it is from Pixar storytelling. Another thread of it is from old school improvisational storytelling, the story spine, which is really potent.
Mm.
Another part of it is there's a little bit of Joseph Campbell, The Innermost Cave, because I find increasingly that every story at the center is really winter into spring. It's
Mm.
really from that place of not knowing, that place of roots down, and the place of being in the mystery, into that first sprout of possibility.
Mm.
And it might take 5 minutes and it might take 5 years, but winter into spring is kind of the essential core of the story, and then you kind of
Mm.
you layer these different approaches, and that's how we come up with a module of change, which is basically like, I want to get to that other mountain peak, but I cannot go directly there, so I'm going to have to go down into the valley of not knowing. And at that point, when I get down there, I am going to discover something, and I'm going to have to be real patient with how I discover it, because it's not going to just come fast. It's going to come with my openness, my attention, my mindfulness, my deeper story listening. And that's how we're going to come through and have something to tell. When I say that this is all going to take 5 minutes or 5 years, I'm not talking about the retelling. I'm talking
Yeah.
about the discovery. So when you're looking
Yeah.
back at your life and you're saying, okay, I've used up my stories, number one, I love stories that you have practiced and told for certain purposes, because it's an opportunity to go back and tell it differently. You might tell it from the middle and then go back to the beginning and then go forward again, right? That's one way to do it. You might
Mm.
discover, go back, do a little time travel, go back into that scene and pop it up again. Say, okay, there I was. What are the sensory details from that scene? There I was. The soft sand at my feet was warming as the rain began to fall. The scent of spring was in the air, but I only had one goal, and my goal was to jump in the ocean, right? So there we are. Well, maybe you start with the sand, or maybe you go to the ocean and you go and feel the cold water at your toes. There's all kinds of different ways to
Mm.
begin a story that you might have felt that was kind of worn out a little bit because you've now told it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So that's one piece of it. I also really believe in mapping your legend. And your legend is not this great story that you've told. The legend is really that little box in the corner of the map that tells you how you navigate life. And
Mm.
so to create an intake of your years on earth and go and look, what were the high points? What were the low points? What were the key insights? What were the things I learned from people? And they don't have to be stories yet. You just give yourself a breath to study your life again.
It's a beautiful way to look at this all. Like I've always tried to live a good story, right? Like I've done some crazy shit in my lifetime, partly because I've been trying to live a good story. And some of it had consequences, and now a lot of it has like ridiculously positive rewards. And I'm like, I'm feeling a little less relatable, to be honest, with my life. I've been feeling like it just keeps getting better, and I'm like, but there's a how do I accept that? How am I okay? I used to be a relatable, like trying hard but failing artist. You know what I mean? And now I have means, and I'm like trying to make sure my family's good and all these things, right? Like I was talking to you about this before the podcast, but like, how do you tell a story in a way that doesn't look so navel gazy? I was giving you some examples. Like sometimes, like I'm telling stories of winning lately, right? I'm telling a lot of stories of winning. I think I need to mix in more of these like cave moments. How
Yeah.
do I get more relatable in my stories when they get a little stuck on, hey, Tim's doing pretty good?
Great question. Uh, I mean, I like what you were just saying, kind of stuck on winning. When you start to hit a stride, uh, or you're in a phase, because I think they come in phases, where you feel like
Yes.
you're hitting a stride,
Yep.
that's a that feels like such a relief. You kind of want to talk about it and share it,
Yep.
but that's not what makes a story interesting. And in fact,
Yep.
it's kind of what makes a story boring. What
Yep.
makes a story interesting is what the transformation is, right?
Mm.
So if you're in a place now where you've come through something, the next step is to bring it to your community, to share the transformation, not just the victory.
Mm.
And that's from a brain science perspective, it adds up, right? A lot of times, I actually was just working with someone that's making a big presentation in front of thousands of people, and it's a big investment with media and backdrop and all of this. And I looked at the media and I said, well, it's kind of mostly all oxytocin. It's mostly
Yep.
all the payoff. It's also, you want to tell the payoff, but you want to land on the payoff, right? You want to set up the payoff with the dopamine, right? Drop into curiosity. The good thing about a story, like a travel story, the good thing about a
Mm.
travel story is you don't know where it's going to go. If you know where the story
Mm.
is going to go, it's boring. We can kind of look at our watches or start, thinking about our calendars or who we're going to have lunch with tomorrow. But
Yep.
that's where the dopamine. So if you look at the curve, it's a curve of change, right? Start up here.
Yeah.
This is how the world was. Then one day, this happened, and you start to go. We discovered this, and we discovered this, and we discovered this. Right? That's more like the summer into fall of the story.
Yeah.
And then you get to the winter, and the winter is where the innermost cave is. That's the place of not
Yes.
knowing. And that place of not knowing, that's where the cortisol is.
Yeah.
That's where the stress is. Now, you don't want too much stress because that's where you get PTSD. That's where you get people going, I don't know if I want to hear this, right? But
Yeah.
just enough stress, just enough cortisol, because it's what makes people really pay attention. We're designed
Yeah.
to pay attention to the risk of the snake coming onto the trail as we walk down the river. We're designed for that. Eons of evolution inside of our DNA tells us to pay attention. So the cortisol is that, oh my gosh, I wasn't sure, right? So you just alluded to a lot of life experiments, let's say. I also have my
Yeah.
fairly long list of life
Yeah.
experiments, many of
Sure.
which went wrong, but then later, many of which became good stories, right?
Yeah.
Only because I can contextualize them. So to be, and I'll give you a few examples. So to be lost is to be out there swimming in the San Francisco Bay in the middle of winter and like feeling a crack in your chest, right? Like
Hmm.
to be lost is, wait a second, this horse is picking up speed and the saddle is starting to slide. To be lost
Hmm.
is maybe more in a kind of business context is, um, let's use a Charles story, a Charles Antis story. To be lost is not knowing how you're going to pay the mortgage with your business and then receiving a call. And that
Mm.
call is from a family that has 6 leaks in their roof. Now, you're so stressed out that you've, in fact, sealed your door to your office so that your clients wouldn't realize that there's a baby crying in the next room. And you've got to pay
Hmm.
a mortgage. And so when you get this call, you're like, okay, this is good news. Here we go. And that moves you into that until finally moment. Now, in Charles's
Hmm.
story, of course, and in many stories, it's not a fast move. It's not the move that you might think, but we do have motion. That's that first sprout. We're going to make it
Hmm.
out of the cave. We're going to make it out
Mm.
of the winter. And that brings us until finally. And that's usually in your story where the message is. It's also in a keynote, for example. It's kind of where your big insight is, your big thing that
Mm.
tomorrow morning, when they've had a cup of coffee and they're waking up groggy and they've taken in 100,000 words from the day before, they remember your story, not because you just told them the victory line, but because you took them through the entire challenge. The dopamine,
Mm.
cortisol and the oxytocin, which lets them go, ah, thank God you made it through. And thank God that makes sense to me. And they don't realize it. They just feel happy. But tomorrow they're going to remember it.
Does your company want to build your brand and get more jobs in the neighborhoods you're currently working in?
The Brick by Brick playbook allows you to establish your brand, your reputation, and gain trust in any neighborhood in your service area with a series of 4 postcards sent once a week to the neighbors of your current jobs. If you want to get more work in the neighborhoods you're currently working in, get with the team at Dope Marketing and get your Brick by Brick playbook set up today.
Yeah, I like what you said also about the anticipation stuff, like dopamine. Interestingly, I just was listening to a Huberman podcast and he was talking about the anticipation of reward being so much more dopamine than the actual reward. So in a story, like cueing it in that the sprout might be coming, like might even be a bigger drop because it's also cessation of pain, right? When there's pain and you're walking somebody through and they're experiencing that, and then you let off, like that can be relieving and increase dopamine for them. I have definitely appreciated just understanding these brain chemicals a little bit more in my ability, because if you can create brain chemicals, if you can create brain chemicals in somebody, you have a powerful communication skill that will help you in any medium. Like if you can do it out loud, if you can do it in text, I just think it's a very interesting thing. I think probably because I did like some chemicals back in the day, that I just like love this idea of the yeah, that's true. I love the ability to create chemicals in people's brains. I think it's probably way more powerful than people remember and or realize. And it helps you remember stuff. Storytelling, just to recap for those of you who've gotten this far and don't know the basics, but storytelling helps you remember stuff, helps your audience remember stuff. And it's really good to be able to do this on a regular basis and to get better at it, because it probably will make, I always say it'll probably make you money. That's how I think. I relate everything back to that on this podcast because it's contractors and they want this to make the money, and I believe it will. Just like humor will make you money. I always say the funniest people in the world are not poor. You know what I mean? And I think it's kind of the same thing, right? Because if you're able to make people laugh on a regular basis, you're able to just squirt chemicals into their brain. And the same goes with storytelling. You're able to just create these chemicals out of the blue in somebody's brain, which is actually incredible.
And the thing is, so it helps you to remember, like you said, it helps to convey change. It helps to establish trust, because you can explain away all of the benefits of all the things that you do, but unless you really convey to them what a transformation looks like, what you've faced, why you do what you do, it doesn't have as high of a percentage chance of cultivating trust, cultivating memorability, and thus cultivating impact. And so I think, I've done maybe 1,000, helped people with 1,000 keynotes over the past 15 years. Just a lot of work on that front. And I can't tell you how many people it's almost like you fall in love with your own data points, right? Because you believe in them. You believe in them.
Yeah.
It's so, and I agree, it's so important, but your audience doesn't know that. They haven't been on your journey. And so your job is to convey to them, put those data points in there, but give it context. Give it a little bit of a little, like you said, a little bit of suspense, a little bit of a journey. And of course, it depends on how and when and why you're telling it.
Talk to me about that. I know the audience that my podcast audience is one of the biggest anchors for them is increasing their revenue and profit. But for instance, a lot of my best stories were before all the business stuff. That's why I say I've run out a little bit, because I have 10 right now. It feels like I have 10 good stories from the business era Tim Brown. And so sometimes I find myself diving back. Oh, I'm going to go back to this stuff back in the day, but it doesn't have a business It doesn't feel like it has a business moral. You know what I mean? Is there usable stuff if you're in a business scenario in like non-business stories, or how can you, how can I use them? How can I use those old stories? Because I have a lot of good ones.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I absolutely. I even think more so. I think we get so, and I've done a ton of workshops, right? And oftentimes people are they come in and say, "Oh, well, we're going to talk about business stories." Really, business stories are stories of, again, stories of transformation. You have to hit your message. That's a non-negotiable. But that's really the most important thing. It's not that you have to always just be sharing about your impacts. Those have specific places. But really what I go looking for what you learned, and then how can you turn that into a metaphor that can inform the main things that you want to convey to your audience, the main things that you work on, the main things, because oftentimes, and I practice this a lot with my kids. I have to admit, they get in trouble. You don't know what to do. It's a teaching moment, and I think to myself, okay, hold back those triggers. It's not time to get angry. It's time to get smart, and think, how can I be relatable? How can I take them on a journey that they're not expecting, and bring them through to convey a critical message that is incredibly relevant to the moment at hand. So my short answer is absolutely, you should be drawing on all of your lived experience and considering, even if it's only for yourself, considering what you learned, and then considering what's the message, how do you take that message into a metaphor, how do you use that metaphor to convey your own credibility, authenticity, and value.
Yeah, and so obviously pertinent to me right now because I'm trying to come up with a keynote. I have a keynote. It's just bad. I'm doing it to myself. Like I'm doing my own keynote every single week. And the last time I told it to somebody on my team, she said there's a lot of stories, and she felt like I was getting lost in the stories because I'm bought into this idea right now, right? I'm really bought into this idea, so I'm going maybe a little too hard or something into the story elements, and she wanted me to pull out from the stories a little bit and make sure I'm hammering the key business points that I want to hit. When you're coaching people on keynotes or just communication in general, how do you coach them to go into a story and then come out of a story with, something substantial at the end of it, especially in a business keynote scenario? And I know I'm being selfish with this question. Hopefully my audience will take something useful as well.
No, I think it's great. I have some definite things about how you translate stories into keynotes, and what the meta story of a keynote is. Can you give me a little bit more information? What's the event, and what was the ask? What were you being
Yeah,
asked?
so I was trying to tell a story about this morning on my Facebook, which was that 2 weeks ago I said I wanted a keynote for 500 people, and then this last week, Hunter Ballou, who runs this event, RoofCon, which is one of the bigger roofing events, he called me and he said, "Hey, dude, do you want a keynote?" So he's like, he must have seen my post or something like that, and he's trying to like help my dream come true, which is super, super ridiculously cool. And so it's a roofing event. We've been involved with this roofing event for 4 years. 2 years ago, we gave away tattoos at the event, and so we had a real tattoo artist, and we did 38 tattoos. 30 of those were their logo, and 8 of those were our logo, including like one of the biggest influencers, maybe a strong word, but his name is Best Damn Roofer, and he put our logo right on his wrist, which was crazy.
That's
But
some
the
that's some pretty interesting marketing. I just want to say that.
Yeah, we like to do weird and unusual things, but I think it's kind of in the direction of what I'm gonna try to talk about, which is getting attention and how to turn that into trust and then sales. So getting attention, particularly online, but like the stories that story, because we once again tried to live a crazy story, which is super fun. I love the idea of trying to live a crazy story. It led us to a bunch. It led me to a bunch of other new adventures that came from that, including um, swimming with sharks. So there's like a bunch of stories that unravel from that, and I was kind of trying to describe how getting attention online or in person, whatever you do, like how some of the stories affected me because we weren't, hiding, because we were putting ourselves out there. And then I ended up like we gave a bunch of we gave 14K to roofers in recovery. We were able to I was able to swim with sharks, and it's all a sequential story because it all unraveled from that moment of giving away these tattoos and some of the stuff that happened from that, which is kind of cool.
Beautiful. I mean, it sounds like you have a ton of content that's relevant. Let me just give you a little bit of a keynote riff here as related to story.
Yeah.
And for those of you that are not engaging in a keynote, the wider frame does come back to what story are you living? It really does, because what's a keynote? What's a story? What's a big story? A big story is a set of little stories that inform your greater path, right? Whether that's your business, whether that's your book, whether that's your new emerging phase of your career. So it all is relevant to me. From a keynote perspective, open cold, right? So no hello, hi, how are you? Boy, this is wonderful. Throw all that out the window, and then you kick in with your strongest opening line. Like, as in, the fin was getting closer to my face.
Yeah.
Right? Not overly dramatic, just skip all the noise, go right into the story, and then explain. And then
I looked behind me, and there was a 8-foot shark 10 feet away from my head.
Right. So that's why I was saying kind of fin, or however you saw a shark, right? However, it's going into the language of emotions rather than necessarily the description. So it's going one level deeper, but still, it's great. I still love it. So then you tell your opening story, and you land it with your first message.
Yeah.
Right? That's why attention is the most critical part of cultivating trust, which I'm not assuming that's actually your message. I'm just kind of going off of what you said. And so then you've kind of hit your then one day, right? So going on the journey curve, you've gone from the setup, the context, to your then one day. But that really begins your journey. How did I discover this? Or why is it relevant to you? And then it's data point, data point, data point.
Yeah.
And those data points could be insights, they could be statistics, they could be discoveries of things you found on the ground. But then you get to your innermost cave. Then you get to your big question mark, right? Because we thought we were at the question mark before. We're like, this is, how do you translate attention into trust? But we're not. Now we've found a bigger, deeper question, and we don't know the answer to it. Right? Speaking a little vaguely, because kind of in concept here, without the total specific. But then you have to solve that. That's the big thing you have to solve. And once you solve it, you come through until you're into your big message, and your big message is maybe what?
It's stop hiding at the kitchen table, which is the sales process. Stop hiding your best information there, and start to tell that information, talk about that information sooner in the marketing process, in videos and social media, and in person. Be more forthright with information instead of that 80s like sales process where you're holding the price back and you're like, oh. It's about being more forthright. It's about being more honest and upfront with customers so that you get the trust, not your competitor who's going to out honest you, basically. So but put simply, it's marketing is just sales at scale, and stop hiding at the kitchen table.
RoofCon is definitely the best conference I've ever attended, and I've been to several. We go to several every single year.
I bought the tickets. I said, we're going. This year they broke 5,000 tickets, so it's growing bigger and bigger every single year.
If you're not here, I don't know where you're at.
Definitely coming back 2024. See you then.
RoofCon, the #1 conference for the roofing and solar community, is coming back to Orlando October 23rd through 25th, 2024. Get your tickets today at roofcon.com.
Okay, so for example, we'll just take one off the top and say that your big takeaway, the thing that you want your audience to know, the following day, after they've taken in these 15 other seminars and talks and, you know, caught a buzz at the cocktail party and got to sleep late and woke up early, and maybe they go to the gym, maybe they get a cup of coffee, they're on to the next thing. It's a lot happening, right? How could you possibly be remembered? Well, the thing that you want them to remember goes right there. So if it is just like you said, stop hiding. Just right there. Stop hiding. And I like stop hiding at the kitchen table, but just stop hiding. You've made a practice of concealing your best work because that's what you've been taught. And I'm going to tell you that the opposite is true.
Yeah. And I think that it's really hard. The thing I really want to convince them is that they should be out there. They should put themselves out there. But I think 80% of them are going to just flat out say no, right? Like, I think that it's tough because I know that my core message, like a lot of people are either going to say no, like explicitly, or they're going to basically say no because they're not going to take action, even though they know they've been told this 100 times and the people that they really look up to did this. You know,
okay.
Like that's.
So I want to be careful because people don't know what we're talking about, and we're speaking conceptually. So we could do a whole nother keynote session in detail.
Yeah. I would do it. I'll hang out with you again. I'll pay for whatever your consulting thing is. By the way,
So,
and if
let me just get to the last part because this is really key.
Yeah.
It's key. Whatever your message is, we haven't decided it because we're still kind of fishing. But you put your message there at that until finally moment after you've come through the great big question, right? Again, winter of not knowing into spring of key insight. And then, and I think this will maybe be the most helpful thing for you, and that's where you put your theory of change. That right there is like, that's the how. So it's the why, it gets down to the what, and that's the how. Yeah. And so your theory of change is, okay, stop hiding. Yeah, fine, that's easy to say, but how do you do it? And then basically, if you kind of borrow from the data that you've already shared over here on the other side of the curve. Oh, we discovered this, we discovered this. Well, how do you truly come out with your best offering to bring, sales at scale? You do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, right? So it's all coherent. It all links from your first story into your discoveries, to your getting lost, to your getting found, and to your payoff. So it might be like
by the way, I think this winter to like fall to winter to spring is like a super easy, like I feel like that's even simpler like of a way to think about this, because I think and the cave idea, and like your best setups are going to kind of come from the cave.
So the writer Kurt Vonnegut says the oldest story in the book basically is guy gets in trouble, guy gets out of trouble. People love that story. They can't get enough of it.
Dude, Vonnegut is like my favorite man from back in the. I haven't read his stuff in a while, but God, it's entertaining. He's a great author. Love Vonnegut.
Look up his work on the shapes of stories. It's so good. I think I allude to it.
Really?
I think the link is in.
I might have to just find it. So Jay, I'm addicted to telling stories. I want to keep doing it. It's really good for. I'm going to say social media, but it's really relationships. It like helps me get more relationships. It helps people relate to what I've got going on. So how can I find more stories?
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to say that the best thing you can do to be a really good storyteller is be a story listener. And so what that means is, where are you listening? You're listening to your life. You're listening to the moments and insights that kind of tap at you and say, hey, this is important. Oh, yeah, I remember that. You don't have to know what the story is. It's just these little insights, these little glimpses. They might be pre-story, right? They might be just little insights that need to percolate to become stories later. But you're listening to your life. You're listening to your dreams. You're listening to those around you, the wise people around you, young and old. And so I like to have a daily practice that I call recent relevant moments. So in a daily practice, I think to myself, end of the day, was there something significant that happened today? Was there something, was there an insight or a synchronicity or a surprise, an unlikely incident that's relevant to my greater work in the world that I can share right now? Now, when I say relevant, I don't mean you're going to use it on stage. I just mean it's part of the practice. It takes you into the practice of, oh, okay, why is that significant? Well, let me go back. Let me think about context. Number one most important thing when you're thinking about a key insight, context. I can't tell you the 100 times that I've worked with complete experts in the world, and they are really hinging on the impact and the significance of the key moment, but not pausing to say, what was your previous self thinking? Right? Not today, not what are you thinking today, but what did you think then? And what was it like the day before? Because the day before you hadn't had that insight. And that's what creates the delta. That's what creates the change. So recent relevant moments, and that might mean something that came up today, or maybe something you just thought of from 10 years ago. Maybe it's this funny thing, like you're saying, you've got a lot of maybe offstage stories, but how to get them relevant to on stage is maybe to contextualize them in lessons. If they have a relevant lesson, a relevant insight that can help your audience, then it's fair game.
Yeah, I wish I could tell more of those stories because they're crazy. Like, for instance, one time I played a complete concert in only plants. I only wore plants. So, I mean, I don't know how to work that into a business context, but maybe.
I like this. Well, I mean, your keynote is about how attention builds trust. It's funny, though, because I was thinking that you were playing an entire concert only to plants, which I really like that idea, too.
That's pretty good, too. That sounds like something they'd be doing in Portland for sure.
Totally. So you're doing your story listening, and you're listening to your life, and you're sitting at a cafe, and somebody says something funny or interesting or curious. And then you think, oh, why is that relevant? Because we're taking in so much data that we're not processing. And so much of just being alive is in distillation. If you open the field, if you widen the field of the lens of your view, and you consider this thing, and you give it a moment, and you just pause and say, give it the 5 whys, okay? Here's a little approach for you. So a little thing taps on you, a little moment from your history, like you just said. Just wearing plants, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's funny, but weird. But is it related to my audience? Ask the 5 whys. And the 5 whys are pretty flexible, but basically they go like this. Why does it matter? No, seriously. I'm not kidding. Why does it matter?
Why did that matter in my life? Because it was like
I'm
me
not
trying
asking,
to.
actually.
Oh, perfect.
I'm pausing because this is the 5 whys. Okay. So why does it matter? Why does it really matter? Right? So you ask yourself, pause, why does that matter? And then you go, then you have an answer. Oh, it matters because, like you're just going to say. Forgive my interruption. The next thing is,
I like it.
The next thing is, seriously, why did it matter? Right? So then you have a maybe slightly different answer. And then the next one is actually, really now, pause, everybody stop. Why did that matter? Why did it matter now? Why does it matter with what I'm doing, who I'm facing, who I'm helping, who I'm about to talk to right now? And then the last one, of course, really important, is seriously, everybody, just stop. Actually, right now, in this moment in time, actually here, today, in this place, why did it matter? And so what happens is you go step by step by step, And you might not get all totally different ones. You might not, they might be throwaways, but somewhere in there is a new answer to an old question.
I think you only gave me 4 whys.
Well,
we need one.
that's because I forgot the last one. I forgot the last one. It's a super important one. I don't know if you could guess what it is, but it's like, why? Why now?
Perfect.
Yeah, I told you it's flexible.
I
I've
like
done
it
this
too because
times.
you could take any crazy or mundane, tiny little situation that pops in your head and just ask those 5 whys, and you could probably come up with, why did that pop in your head? So it's a nice way to kind of like glean nuggets and kind of dust them off, like get a gold chunk.
Absolutely. And from a brain science perspective, it's really about keeping your hippocampus flexible. Your hippocampus is your filing system, right? It's what runs between all of the data and your storage. So you're getting a question, you run through the hippocampus, you're looking at all of where your storage is, your frontal lobe, it's gathering and connecting these dots and then bringing you an answer. Well, you want to keep your hippocampus flexible. And with Alzheimer's, actually one of the big problems is that it gets rigid. So you want to keep that flexible and active. And part of the way to do that is these ideas come up and then you actively search through your, frontal lobe and you're searching for why that might be relevant. Then you come up with a story. It's how you stay fresh.
Well, I think that's about as much as we could cover in this short podcast. But could you give me like the various ways that somebody could work with you? So if they wanted to take this further, whether they're trying to tell more stories. I think one of the big things that Charles Antis has talked about is how he's used storytelling internally to create a stronger culture. Or if they're trying to do a keynote like me, or if they're just trying to get more interaction on the internet, what are the different possible methods for working with you?
Thank you. Thank you for asking. It starts with coaching. That's kind of the top line. I work with a lot of CEOs and founders, have worked with a lot to help them take in their life, understand their challenges, understand the place they are in the world, translate stories for all the different ways that they use them. So that might be the big stage, the small stage, it might be for Zoom calls, it might be for teaching moments, it might be for, like you just said, a keynote. There's a variety, 100 different ways you can use stories and that you can use your insights. So there's coaching, there's keynote speaking. I have my own keynote, whether it's talking about how to navigate change in a changing time, whether it's about story living and how to live your greatest story, whether it's about translating your insights into retellable stories, a much more tactical approach. So I do keynotes. They're all interactive. I never do a keynote without interaction. I studied improv. I'm all about the audience and about being responsive. Trainings are a little more extensive, right? A longer version of the same thing. I also I've been doing more internal culture shows. So I actually create storytelling experiences, which gather different leaders from an organization or a network and put them on stage and teach about story, folding in the audience into a kind of shared development process of so everybody feels more connected and more, up on their insights that they've gathered in their life. So that's kind of the short list. You can also pick up my book, which is Retellable, like you've said, on Amazon, and check out retellable.com.
I'm glad it's in your own voice too, Jay, because I think it's crazy because if you listen to an audiobook and then you meet somebody in person, like I just feel actually like I kind of already know you. You know what I mean? Like we're kind of already homies.
I love that.
That's how I feel because I've been listening to you for like 5 hours.
Thank you. I love that. It was a big challenge. I was challenged actually before I finished the book, you're not going to like what I have to say here, but before I finished the book that I should read the entire thing out loud.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. You still can do it because yours is it can be an iterative process, but I was challenged to read the whole. So I had a buddy with the studio and went into the studio and probably did 2 days in the studio. And you find things that don't sound right when you speak them. And so you stop and then you make a little edit. They're not huge things that maybe feel repeated. But yeah, I enjoyed
what
that
I did.
process.
What I thought was on that is that's useful for this book I just finished is I did actually modify what will be the printed version from my audiobook read through, which because
Oh,
it just
good.
didn't flow right, which was a good. I think it was a good like move to do that because I was saying it and then but I didn't do it once before I did the audiobook. So, but yeah, but that's a great principle. I think it's just like how does something feel conversationally?
And how does it feel alive? Again, coming back to the
Yeah.
idea that you are not just telling a story, you are living a story. And do you know what that story is? And do you know the stories that add up to your life?
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for being on the podcast. The podcast is put on by hookagency.com, Hook Agency all over social media. I don't think that this is just this particular episode is just about communication even. I mean, it's very beautiful that the things that you're teaching, Jay. I'm proud of you and what you're doing with your life because I think it's probably a very meaningful experience. And I've already been challenged to grow as a human just by the things that I've learned from you. I hope I'm putting some of them into practice. So I appreciate you, man.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's great to talk with you, great to learn from you, and let's keep the conversation going.
Yes, sir.